Hey guys, you can kickstart a fresh fall routine with HelloFresh. HelloFresh handles all the meal planning and shopping to deliver everything you need to cook up a tasty meal right at home. They do the hard part, and you get to take the credit. Go to HelloFresh.com/50cheapseats, 50 cheap seats, all one word, and use the code 50cheapseats for 50% off plus 15% off the next 2 months. That's HelloFresh.com/50cheapseats. Use the code 50cheapseats for 50% off plus 15% off the next 2 months. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of View from the Cheap Seats, our look at the week in sports, a.k.a. the week, W-E-A-K in sports. And we have got a great one as we are in the midst of college football, as teams go to start to play their conference schedules. We're in the thick of it. So last weekend was a little light when it came to intriguing matchups. I'd say the Tennessee-Florida game was the best one.
It's great.
This weekend, we got a lot of big games on the slate.
Oh, my God.
Notre Dame, Ohio State sort of leading the pack, but you have a lot of great games.
Colorado gets tested by Oregon this week.
There's a lot.
Michigan-Rutgers is going to be a good game. Rutgers is a 3-0 team, so a lot there. So with that in mind, we bring on one of the greatest voices in college football. He is the voice of the University of Michigan Wolverines radio broadcast. Jon Jansen played for the national championship team.
Played for Washington in the NFL.
Played for 11 years in the NFL.
I think he played for Detroit, too.
Maybe. So we will talk to Jon about just the college landscape, why things are good. We cover such an array of topics, including Coach Prime, including the idea of players unionizing. There is so much we talk about with this guy. His knowledge is incredible.
Load management.
We don't know
how load management can save a marriage.
So
it's not what you think it is.
We're going to talk about that, and then we have quick hits, and then later on the show,
voicemail from Mark Wahlberg.
Mark Wahlberg
left his voicemail. But first, we touched on. Let's keep it in the world of college football. We touched on the Colorado Buffaloes.
Yeah.
Amazing story, okay? I love what Coach Prime has done. I love how he's turned that culture, that program, the excitement.
Were they 1-11 last year?
There's no doubt there's a whole new excitement in Boulder. People are stopping their hiking and starting tech companies to come and watch college football again. It's exciting. It's not like Colorado hasn't had great teams in the past. Think of the Cordell Stewart years.
Yeah.
Think of our buddy, Coach
Rick
Neuheisel did great things there. Look, Colorado is not a place that hasn't had great football.
They do.
But it's been a long time since they've had it, and definitely there's a lot of excitement around the team as they are 3-0.
I mean, I watched the game, and I'll talk about this with Jansen, but I watched the game with my friend Chris.
Colorado State
this past weekend, and at the end of the game, I watched that game, and
they were down 11.
Down 11. I was like, they're going to win this game.
You said it to me as I walked out your door.
I said they're winning this game.
And I was like, oh my God, he's right. They were winning this game. They went to overtime, and it still wasn't over. And you were like, they're winning this game. There's no way they're not.
Because they've got it, and that is exciting. Now, I mean, Deion Sanders was interviewed on 60 Minutes. That tells you how big
what a cultural moment this is, how much it's stepped outside the bounds of college football, and it's now made 60 Minutes.
So I want to put him in the context of Bo Jackson because it doesn't get talked about enough
that he played professional baseball.
How great
and was
of a
good
baseball player he was, and he is the greatest DB of all time. I'm going to say it like return man, DB, one of the most exciting, flashiest, fun players in the history of the NFL.
Played both ways in the NFL. And one of those guys who you said this single player who's not a quarterback, who's not a running back, can affect a game. This single player can make a team good. He made Atlanta good.
Yeah.
He made teams better.
Gave Atlanta swag. He made, of course, he made
Dallas
the Cowboys great. Won with the Cowboys, won it all. So he's got rings. He knows how to be a champion. He was incredible on Florida State. And he's magnetic, and he's fun, and he's got, so all those things make sense. And then played baseball on the highest level, was a key part of that Atlanta Braves. The fact that he was playing both, at the same time. Bo Jackson was incredible because he played baseball and he was unbelievable as an all-star as a baseball player, and he was an incredible running back. Is he the greatest running back of all time? I'd say he's up there, but is he the greatest professional running back of all time? He maybe goes down in college football history as one of the best, but Jim Brown, O.J. Simpson, there are
Walter Payton.
There are many players ahead of him in the pecking order of that. Deion Sanders is the best. Tell me a DB that's better than Deion Sanders.
And he played baseball at a level that I would say comparable to Bo Jackson. So he's done things that you didn't expect him to do, and now here he is.
And his sons are on the team, and his son is like sort of making a Heisman run as a quarterback and putting up unbelievable numbers.
So all that given
all that makes sense that there'd be attention. However, let's pump the brakes on Colorado as a contender. They have played 3 games, one against an inflated, better than we thought, higher ranked than it was, overrated TCU team. Then they played
Nebraska, which is not really that
not a good team. Then they played
Colorado State at home, which they should have
way less. Not as good a team at all, but they should have blown them out, and they took them all the way to overtime. This week they play Oregon. The Pac-12 has never been tougher. We talk about this with Jansen. The Pac-12, which is sadly, ironically, dissolving after this year, has never been better.
Sad. We'll talk about how we can get back to that.
You got Oregon. They're not playing Washington. That's lucky.
USC, UCLA, Washington State, Oregon State, Utah,
and Oregon.
And then Arizona and Arizona State.
They'll probably beat Arizona State, and Stanford. So that's 6 wins. But they're going to have to beat teams that are really good.
Washington State. They're going to have to beat Oregon State. I don't know if they can beat UCLA. I mean, they're going to have to win those games in order to have a transcendent year.
So now, if they win 3 of those games, then
they're 9-3.
They're 9-3. To me, that's probably the best case scenario for these teams.
That's unbelievable.
That's an amazing flip. I think more realistic is 7-5.
So you're saying
and maybe 6-6.
Hold off on the 60 Minutes interview until you know whether
until we're at the end of the season. Then
so that 60 Minutes interview is not going to age well, is what you're saying.
So they're not going to the national championship game. I can tell you they probably
they're not going to be in the playoff.
They will probably not make the playoff. Now, if they run the table,
they deserve to be there.
If they run the table and surprise everyone, then I'll eat my words and I'll say that I'm not seeing that right now.
I don't put it past Coach Prime. I give him a small, maybe a 5% chance.
If anyone can do it with the team that he has, it's him. They're missing their best player for 3 games. That's going to be tough.
I don't
think they run the table, but if they find a way to go 9-3, 10-2, even 8-4,
right?
I think he's done an unbelievable job.
He'll be coach of the year.
They will go to a high-profile bowl game.
He'll be coach of the year, and think about it moving forward. If he wants to stay as the coach of Colorado,
which he might, he's saying his kids aren't going to graduate and they're going to come back and play another year. Fine,
which would be amazing.
Great.
And then he's talking to Bryce Underwood, who is the 2025 the quarterback in Michigan's backyard, who Michigan really wants, who is the #1 recruit in all of 2025.
If Prime wants him and Prime's going to stay, Prime gets him.
I agree.
I don't think there's any way he doesn't. And I think there are tons of great recruits who are lining up. Success begets success. He has a lot to prove and a lot to show.
He doesn't have to do it all this year. This is the stepping stone. So 6-6 might be a bit of a disappointment, but in the context of last year,
he can really say far. We're moving the needle. He said just wait till next year, and maybe they go 8-4 next year. Maybe they go 7-5.
I mean, build a national championship
in 3 years,
team in
2 years, in 3 years, in 4 years. Who knows?
Who knows if Nick Saban's still going to be at Alabama at that point?
Maybe Deion Sanders goes to Alabama. Who knows if the Florida State job comes clear?
I don't know because they're playing really great this year.
Maybe. You don't know.
But I
who knows if Dallas is playing well, but who knows if a job in the NFL comes open and they're like, Deion, we want you.
He's learning his sort of getting his chops right now and being that coach. I would love to see him.
If I'm recruiting,
I would love to see him as a professional.
If I'm recruiting against Deion, what I'm saying to my
He's gone.
Is that he's going to be in the NFL within a year?
Yeah, the NFL.
So if you love him now, love him.
But the NFL is going to want him.
He'll be gone.
Same way people, sort of negative
recruit against Jim Harbaugh. It makes sense.
So I agree with you. Pump the brakes, and I agree. I think 7-5, 6-6. That's what you're going to see. They're going to beat one team that you didn't think they were going to beat, and still continue that hope through the year. They might be 6-2 at that point,
right?
And then lose a handful of games, and then you'll be like, "Well, that's what this is." But it is still amazing. Again, I watched that game this past weekend, and I said, "They've got it." There's something happening with this team. There's a special sauce that you can't put your finger on. Obviously, it's Prime. It's what he brings to it. But there is something special about that team. But they may be a very, very special 6-6 team. All right, with that, let's take a break. We'll come back, talk to Jon Jansen, one of the greats, one of the all-time greats, great broadcaster, great professional football player in the NFL, and great college football player.
And a great guy
on the national championship team. We'll be right back with more View from the Cheap Seats right after this. Hey guys, welcome back to the show. We are so excited to have this gentleman on. We've been a fan of his for so long when he played football at Michigan.
Then when he covered football on Sirius Radio, and now he is...
I mean, I was a fan of him in the NFL. The guy was. We always follow our Michigan guys as they go out into the NFL. Had a wonderful, I want to say, 11-year storied career. Is that correct? Am I 11 years?
Yep.
Jon Jansen.
Yep.
He played for the then Redskins, the Washington football team. And many other teams. But he is amazing and now is the voice of Michigan football.
Color commentator for the radio play of Michigan football.
Amazing that it's sort of come full circle for him. And we're so lucky to have him right now as we are about to start conference play for many, many teams. The sort of non-conference or preseason schedule is over, and we're now getting into the beginning of the meat of the college football.
Is this your favorite time of year right now,
John?
There's no question. I mean, football season all time of year is like that's where it is all at. And, you know, the preseason, as we can call it, because when you play teams that are referred to as alphabets, you know, you play your UNLVs, your ECUs, your BGS,
directionals. Hey, directionals.
That's the preseason.
Sure.
But now that we're in the regular season, I mean, this is a sweet spot, so we like to say.
So it is.
Randy and I were just talking this morning.
Think we can remember a time, certainly in the last, I want to say 10, 15 years, 20 years, I would say since Alabama's dominance. Let's put it just in that scope right there, where it's been this wide open. We started going through the teams that have a potential to be playoff teams, okay? You've got, I think, the top 10, 11, 12 teams could be playoff teams. You look at that Washington team, and I'm like, tell me a team in the Pac-12 that's going to
And then you look at Oregon.
You're like, tell me a team that's going to beat them. And USC and UCLA is playing great with their. And, of course, Michigan, Penn State, and Ohio State.
Notre Dame,
Florida State. Obviously, Georgia. And, I mean, I'm not even going to put Alabama in that. I think they're outside the top 10 or 12. It's, like, exciting this year because you don't know.
Well, it is. And you think about the top-end schools. It's been Alabama. It's been Clemson. It's been Georgia. And now that those teams they're all trying to find that next quarterback.
Yes.
And until they do, it's been a struggle for them this year. And, you know, Georgia has lost so many guys over the last 3 years to the NFL, whether it's offensively or defensively. They're a team that can restock, but they've got to regenerate that camaraderie, that teamwork, and they're just not there yet. And you look at a team like Michigan, and you know it's not like you need an advantage. We're not looking for other teams to be down,
right?
But there are so many teams that have a chance to break through that are outside the SEC, that are outside of Clemson in the ACC. That it's a lot of fun. Makes college football that much more fun
this year.
That when you have a quarterback, I think we're seeing that more and more, because you look at a school like Clemson, and you start to look at their run that they had with Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Happy Ending Watson. You look at that sort of dominance for 6-7 years that they had.
You're like, oh, it was quarterback driven. Not that they didn't have good defensive players. Not that they weren't a good. Yep. They're a good top 10 team, but with the quarterback, they have a shot to beat.
You look at what Ohio State did for a decade and a half, and it was great quarterback, followed by great quarterback, followed by great quarterback who fit in their system, you know. And so finally, you got schools like Michigan that have that player in place. I would argue that I'm watching Notre Dame so far, and this kid from Wake Forest who's now at Notre Dame seems to have control of what he's doing there, and they suddenly look like they're a team to contend with. Are we wrong to say that college football is a quarterback-driven landscape?
Well, I mean, football in general, it's all going to be quarterback driven. And those teams that don't have a quarterback, it's all smoke and mirrors. And eventually that runs out. Yeah. And you run into a defense where, hey, they're just better than you are offensively.
Right.
USC with Caleb Williams. Yeah. I mean, these are the teams that you're looking at and going, well, you know, how is Oregon State a top 20 team? Well, they got the transfer, DJ Uiagalelei, from Clemson, and now all of a sudden they're a top 20 team.
Yeah. Right. And you look at
Washington. That was another great example. Michael Penix Jr. comes from Indiana, where he was great and made Indiana great. A school that was good but made them great, and now he's in Washington.
He gave Tom Allen like 5 more years
on a contract.
Right?
He made him a lot of money.
Think about that.
A lot of money.
So you're also obviously you follow J.J. McCarthy in Michigan, and he had a bit of a down week this past week, trying to do maybe a little too much. But the kid's got so much talent. It's there in him. It's his leadership's great. His talent's great. You feel like finally they can, with all the players and all the pieces, they have an opportunity to make that run, and you're watching it up close, which is remarkable.
It's awesome to be able to be around these kids. And first of all, I mean, it feels like they keep me a little bit younger.
Yes.
I get a chance to interact with them. I'm on a college campus every single day.
Right.
And then I watch these kids when they come in and then they develop. And some of them come in right away and you're like, holy cow, this kid, like Zach Zinter, when he came in, you knew immediately he was going to be on the field because he was just built to play football. And he was at 18 years old, he was grown like a 33-year-old man.
Yeah.
And so they come in and play right away. But now I've seen him develop, and Trevor Keegan on the offensive line, and you get a couple of guys from around the country that come in, and in the transfer portal has really changed the business and the game of college football. And then you've got a quarterback that you've developed at J.J. McCarthy. You got wide receivers that are starting to understand what they have in their quarterback. You got one of the best tight ends in the country, two of the best backs, if not the best tandem in the country. And offensively, they'll match up with everyone. And you mentioned the kind of a down day for JJ against Bowling Green. And honestly, I think with the non-conference schedule, there is a point where you just get bored. And I don't mean bored in like, I don't want to play football. No, but it's bored in regards to, hey, you throw an interception, and the first one I don't think was on JJ. I think the tight end was in the wrong spot. But you throw one, and you're like, it's Bowling Green. We're still going to win. Right. And then the second one comes, and you're still like, okay, we're still winning, and it's like, you know what? I'll get that fixed. There's a less of a sense of urgency. Right. But now that the Big Ten season is upon us, hey, that sense of urgency ramps up because JJ, Donovan, these guys that are in their third year, they know nothing other than winning Big Ten championships, beating Ohio State, and going to the college football playoffs.
And it is, I mean, again, you're looking at Ohio State, we're like, well, they were down early this year. And then you're like, no, they're starting to put it together. And you start to look at these teams, you're like, okay, well, what is the non-conference for? Okay, what is it for? It's for you to figure out depth pieces, get guys in there who, you know, Michigan had a bunch of in their back seven guys hurt, like key pieces that are hurt. And so what happens is you get sophomores out there playing. You see it all over the country. You see young guys who are getting a chance to play. It's that third wide receiver option who seems like he's not maybe the most important guy, but that guy frees, if he's good, that guy frees up your other guys, and maybe that's a freshman, maybe that's someone you brought in from the transfer portal. So it's kind of a time for coaches to figure stuff out as opposed to put your absolute killer plan out
in
there.
your heart. I'm going to ask you this question. Next year, Michigan has Texas on the schedule. Obviously, as fans, we want to see big matchups early in the season. You want to see the best football you can. In your heart, as a fan as well as someone who's affiliated with a team, do you like to see the big games early, or do you just
Well, you played them.
I do. I want to see, of the three. Now, not all three have to be Texas, Alabama, Oklahoma.
Sure.
But I want to see one of those games so that you're not getting into the Big Ten season. Fortunately for Michigan, it's Rutgers, it's Nebraska, it's Minnesota.
Yeah.
And so there's a ramp up to getting to, and now obviously East Lansing, that's been a little bit weird in the last 7 to 10 days. It's gotten weirder.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But when you think about, hey, the ramp up of going to State College and playing Penn State, who is a very athletic and talented team.
Yep.
You want to make sure that you're tested before you get there. And obviously the last game of the year, no matter if Ohio State is up or down, they're going to continue to get better. They're going to continue to develop, and they're going to have Notre Dame this weekend. They're going to have that opportunity to test themselves and find out, hey, where's our shortcomings?
Right.
And they'll be able to patch those holes. Michigan's got to figure those out as they get into the Big Ten season.
What's so great is that, you know, as the NFL adds another game, think about that. I mean, you know, I don't know your opinion about the NFL, the fact that you played in it. I'm not sure we need 4 preseason games. Guys get hurt and whatnot. you could probably cut that down to 2. Just so you're playing the same, or 3 maybe. You know what I mean? I know it's money and whatnot, but imagine playing that extra game. Not that it 17 is different than 16. It makes the college season that much more important.
Special. Every game matters.
Every game kind of matters.
You could drop 5 games in the NFL. You can have 5 bad weeks. And if those are all losses, and if you still come in 12 and 5, you might win your division. You might be a top seed. You might have home field advantage.
Well, and here's what's going to happen in the expanded Big Ten and the expanded SEC. You're going to have records that are more like we see in the NFL, because now instead of just Michigan State, Penn State, and Ohio State, now you're going to throw in USC and UCLA. You're going to have Oregon and Washington.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to have more teams on your schedule that are very formidable. Mm-hmm. And I think Michigan runs the table this year. This could be the last year that we see an undefeated Big Ten champion.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be so hard to run through the Big Ten with that gauntlet that it's going to be.
So when you think, I mean, what's crazy, and I know this has got to be crazy for you because you're an old school guy. You're an old soul guy.
Yes.
You could have been a lineman in 1970. Like, you could have been sitting next to Deerdorf on the line.
Or Len Dawson when he was smoking like at halftime of the Super Bowl.
Like these old school guys, okay? The idea that the Pac-12 is being, just dissolved in front of our eyes.
And they've never been better.
7 teams are unbelievable this year. I mean, that's got to kill you. I'm a regional guy. I think the regionalism of college sports is incredible. So it kills me that the Pac-10 is, I would call it the Pac-10. The Pac-12 is down. Isn't that crazy that they're having their
Can't they call a mulligan and just be like, whoops, let's keep this.
We'll keep it.
I wish they would. And even if, college football is taking on a life of its own. Yeah. And we're down that road. We're not, use any analogy you want. We're not putting the toothpaste back in the bottle.
Right.
But for the non-revenue sports, I really hope that at some point they get to the regionality of it, because it's not fair to those student athletes. But for football, to think that the Conference of Champions is not going to exist anymore. And I don't care if Washington State and Oregon State, if they hold on to the brand that is the Pac-12 and, and now it's a 2-pack, that right. They're not going to have the same cachet without USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington. Like, it is a disservice to college football fans, because regionality is part of what makes college football so unique, different from the NFL, and so special.
So here's my question. Is there a way that we go around the cul-de-sac and come back to the same place? I.e., do we have divisions within these massive conferences? And there's a West Coast, there's a West division. There's the Big Ten West, and it's like literally the West Coast. And you're kind of back in Pac-12 land again, and they mostly play each other with 1 out of conference or 2 or 3 out of conference games, out of division games. And then it starts to look like it used to look. It's just called a different thing.
I think you nailed it. And that's exactly what it happens is, and whether it's the Big Ten and the SEC, or if they just say, hey, NCAA, you are so inept, and it's so bad trying to do business with you, we're just going to remove everything. I mean, they're not in charge of the college football playoffs anyway.
Right.
So let's just remove all of the teams that are going to eventually be in the Big Ten and the SEC. Let's make one big conference, and then you run it like you run the NFL.
Divisions.
And you do have, and who knows what it's called. Let's call it, just the West Division. You've got the North, you've got the Central and the South, and that's on one side of the division. You have the same thing on the other side of that conference, and you run it just like you would an NFL. Playoffs will be the same thing. You got division winners. You have wild cards, and then all of a sudden you have a playoff system that is going to mirror what is in the NFL. And I think you guys nailed it. You have to get back to the regionality of what is college football, because honestly, you look at the NFL, and other than the weird, NFC East, because they got Dallas in there.
Yeah.
Like, how the hell did that happen?
It's crazy.
But Yeah, that's where you've got to get to.
Right. So there is, like, the Cleveland Browns hate the Steelers. Like, you saw them play this past week. Like, Pittsburgh and Cleveland, it's so close to one another. They don't like each other. Western Pennsylvania, Ohio, they don't like each other.
Patriots, Giants hate each other.
Don't like each other.
Eagles, Giants hate each other.
Patriots,
Eagles,
Jets. Like,
Washington.
Yeah. So you do have a little bit of that region.
Bills, Jets hate each other. Like, all those, the hatred is there within the region. We got to bottle it up and keep it there.
So maybe we get to that, but I think that's a little ways away. I mean, the good thing about the playoffs itself expanding is, like you said, I don't know if we're going to see teams run the table anymore. You're right. I just don't know.
But now you don't have to be top 4 next year. You got to be top 12.
And you might lose a game, like you said, or lose two. But you're like, hey, what we learned from those 2 losses early on, what we learned from that non-conference loss against Texas or Oklahoma or what have you, we now take that into the playoffs, and we understand kind of who we are a little bit better.
Yeah, and I think what you're going to have is a better playoff system, and it's really going to come down to the athletic directors and the presidents of these universities saying, how okay are we with going from, we're at 12 games now, what if it was a 14-game season? And, and then all of a sudden you get into the playoffs, and then you have a college team or college athletes playing 14, 15, 16 games in college. And let's all be real. It's going to be driven by money. And if they look at it and say, you know what, we can host another college football game, and it's going to bring $15 million a weekend to our community.
Yeah. Who's going to turn it down? You can't turn that down.
I could very easily see a playoff system go to where the national championship happens in that week between the final playoff game in the NFL and the Super Bowl. And you see that last week of January.
Where there's nothing. You know what I mean? There's a little NBA and there's a little bit of hockey.
But it's like all devoted to college. Screw the Pro Bowl. Take those shorts off out in Hawaii, and we go straight to national championship college football Saturday or Sunday.
Yeah, because nobody's ready to turn the page to college basketball or the NBA or hockey for sure until the NFL season is over. So you do have that 2-week stretch there where both teams in the NFL get a bye, and everybody is wandering around aimlessly all weekend long because they don't know what to do with themselves without football.
Imagine if that's like national championship weekend. That would be phenomenal, and you could get to that place. I think teams would be constructed differently. You look at kind of like a backfield like Michigan has right now with a Blake Corum and a Donovan Edwards. You start to see like, okay, maybe there is some, you know what I mean? Let's not load management, but let's sort of spread it around a little bit more. Guys, offenses might be spread around to not put so much tread on guys' tires.
Yeah, and then, you start to get some of these young guys, like Michigan's got Ben Hall.
Yeah.
I think at some point in the season when they're up to speed with what Michigan needs of them, then all of a sudden you see them get some more reps, and you'll probably see younger players get more time, whether it's due to injury or like you mentioned. And I don't like the term load management. It makes me think of the NBA, and I kind of want to punch myself in the face.
Same.
Yeah, but you get to something of that nature where, hey, we need Blake Corum when we get to the playoffs. We've got to find a way to get there with him, but we got to walk this fine line between Blake Corum, Donovan Edwards, and whoever else it is to make sure that we get enough of them out of the regular season to win games to get to the playoffs, and that they're healthy and they're 100% at that point.
Well, I will say this. In my own life, I will tell my wife if she's like, you need to do some lawn work, you need to do some clean out the garage. I'm like, I'm in a load management situation right now. You're going to need me at the end of this season, so I need to lay down on the couch and watch college football. It's okay that you want me to do this. I just want to make sure I'm there for you in December.
I don't want to be injured when
you don't want me out holiday
when
season.
It's crunch time,
when we have to really get to work.
I thought you were going with load management, but we'll go with that.
Yes, Jansen. So it is really exciting this year. I would throw Colorado in the mix, although Jay and I were going through their schedule of games coming up. And
we talked about this at the top of our show before we got to you, and that is that Colorado right now is the flavor of choice. I mean, when you have Deion Sanders doing a 60 Minutes interview, you're like, okay, here we go. We're
Jimbo Fisher doing a 60 Minutes interview.
No. So it's a flashy story. It's an exciting story. It's a turnaround story. We get that.
He's amazing.
He's amazing. Right now they're 3-0. You look at their schedule and the loaded Pac-12, and you say to yourself, realistically, they could be 6-6. I see 3 wins right now automatically. I see Arizona State, I see Arizona, I see Stanford. Now, they got to play Oregon State. They got to play Oregon. They got to play, as we mentioned earlier in the show, we got to play Oregon
Washington State, Washington, USC, and UCLA.
and Utah. Oh, actually, no Washington.
No Washington, but
and Utah. Now, I don't know. They don't have their best player for 3 games. Like we're in a situation now where very realistically, in a good scenario, they're 7-5. In a great scenario, they're 8-4. I think that's it.
Yeah, I think realistically, they're probably going to be a 7-win team. And maybe I'm a little bit more optimistic than most, but I think they get a gut check and a reality check this weekend against Oregon. And, Coach Lanning said, and it wasn't a shot at Deion. I know Deion loves to take anything that's said about him or his program
Bulletin board material,
and use it as motivation, as we all love to do in football.
Sure.
But when was the last time Colorado did anything in the Pac-12? They haven't, and they're not ready to take on a team like Oregon. Now, they may score some points, but I think they're just not going to be able to keep up with what Oregon does offensively. Same thing against USC. They're just not going to be able to keep up with USC. Some of the other programs, Washington State, I think that's going to be interesting because hopefully by the time they play them, Colorado will be closer to full strength. That Hunter will be back.
Right.
But even if they don't have them in these coming weeks, they're going to be 3-2 after week 5.
Yeah, they might be. Yeah, exactly. Like this, I think
3-2 after week 5, maybe 5-2 after week 7, and then it starts
5-4, and then you start to lose
5, and now you got to win one. You got to win one that we're not expecting you to win in order to go 7-5.
Although I will say this, and yes, I know it's Colorado State, and yes, I know they were supposed to just blow them out of the water, and yes, I know it's at home and it's at night, and you should do it. You lose your best player, that's
on a cheap shot.
On a cheap shot, that rocks your team on some level. They're down 28-17. I'm sitting with my buddy, okay? He's over it, and I'm like, they're going to win this game. They come down, they kick the field goal.
They have that weird 1995 Northwestern smell about them, where you're like, how do you – or even the first Urban Meyer year at Ohio State, where they came off that bad year, or for them, a bad year. And
they got the ball. That punter on Colorado State, Coffin cornered that ball in a way that I was like, how did that stop? That is rolling towards the end zone, and then it takes the weirdest at the 2, just deaden. I was like, did someone shoot that ball with a gun from the crowd? Dies, and it's on the 2, and I turn to my buddy. I'm like, they're going 98 yards. They're going 98 yards right now, and get the 2-point conversion.
They did what they needed to.
That was the best of college football. And we only get a chance to really see that. We see it more in college football than we do anywhere else.
That's
but maybe
right.
5 or 6 times throughout the course of a year where a moment like that happens and then it forces overtime. They go into double overtime.
Awesome.
In the NFL, you've got to wait all the way until the playoffs for a Patrick Mahomes to do something like that or a Josh Allen.
That's right.
But it's so rare. And in college football, when that happens it's really the only time you look at a team and you say, you know what, 98 yards, and I don't even know how many seconds it was, 45 seconds?
Yeah, it was not long.
I think they're going to do this.
Yeah.
It's really only college football that you say that.
Right. I want the pros, I want the NFL to adopt the college football overtime method, because I think at least in college everyone gets a shot. Like you can't, I know you owe your defense, you have to shut them down and keep them out of the end zone. I know, but I mean, I watched in the NFL this past week. I don't know if you watched the Chargers, and I'm like, the Chargers are the most unlucky team ever. The Chargers are the Clippers on turf.
Okay,
that's who they are.
They're great players. No interceptions. Justin Herbert, I think, is a great quarterback. I think he can be elite.
He might be West Coast Josh Allen, we think.
But the fact that, they couldn't do anything with their overtime possession, it's like, do something with it. Do something. Don't get stopped. Make your, at least get.
But it could end in a tie. How insane is that? Like an NFL game.
Did you have any ties? Did you play any ties in your career, in your NFL carear?
No, I don't think we ever had a tie when I was in the NFL.
Awful feeling.
My very first game, we played Dallas, and we were up by 2 scores going into the fourth quarter. We were morons, and we ended up tied at the end of the game. And, of course, hey, Troy Aikman is a quarterback. They win the coin toss. One play later, I'm watching Rocket Ishmael go 80 yards for a touchdown and game over.
Yeah.
Like it's such a
It's disheartening.
Yeah, there's such a capital punishment for losing a coin toss.
Yeah, I know. That bothers me.
And if that happens and you never see the ball, I mean, we experienced it in Detroit this past weekend.
Yeah,
that's right.
And I know Justin Herbert should certainly be one of those guys that could do it, because if Geno Smith can do it,
I know.
Then honestly, anybody should be able to do it.
What do you think of Detroit this year? I mean, I know they came out of the gates with a big win, and then they sort of
should have won that game at home. But I think a lot of people, if you said you're playing a playoff team in Seattle preseason, playing a playoff team in Seattle, and we'll probably make it to the playoffs again. That's
you're playing the Super Bowl
team.
champs.
Super Bowl champs. You come out of that 1-1, you got to feel good about yourself.
Oh yeah, I mean it's unfortunate the way the game ended, because we had the ball on the 50-yard line, minute 44 to go, 3 timeouts. First play is a 12-yard pass completion. Boom, you're moving a ball. Next one, 11-yard completion, and you're moving the ball. And it felt so anticlimactic that you beat Kansas City in Kansas City, and then you lose at home in overtime to the Seattle Seahawks. But where Dan Campbell has this team, where Brad Holmes has brought this roster over the last 2.5 years, is nothing short of amazing.
Yeah.
And we are so excited here in Detroit just to have a team that's competent.
Yes.
Just to have a GM that we believe he understands what good football players look like, and you got to try and and stack as many as possible. And that's what we're excited about now. And last year you finished 9-8, you win 10, you win 8 of your last 10. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of excitement. It was dampened this past weekend, but it's 17 weeks.
Yep.
I believe they win this division. They're going to be a playoff team. And we're going to look back and say, yeah, that Seattle game, it really sucked. But, hey, we're still in the playoffs.
Well, I think you bring up a great point, which is, and this can tie back to college and certainly with Michigan, the value of a coach that has full buy-in, that is on the sidelines making the calls. I mean, I don't think we factored in enough in these first 3 games what Michigan has had to deal with without having.
It's a bummer. It's a bummer because this season lined itself up with a junior quarterback, all these guys returning. You know what I mean?
You need that guy on the sideline.
It's a bummer that we don't have him for the first 3 games. I think that has an effect on him, and I'm sure you saw it too, having played there and seeing it up close.
Well, it had an effect on Jim Harbaugh. I know that. Knowing the competitor that he is, and he's talked about it. Like I've never been a part of a team where I wasn't there on game day. Yeah, you might be injured, but you're still there.
Right.
But the players, when you don't have your leader, and the benefit is that players in a leadership position, the captains, the seniors, they had to step up and fill some of that void. Assistant coaches had to step up and fill some of that void, but you can never, in totality, fill what your head coach brings to that, whether it's a locker room, it's adjustments, it's decisions, it's a presence. And there's nobody that brings a presence like Jim Harbaugh.
Well, you talk about, we talked about J.J. McCarthy throwing 3 interceptions. Could have been a 4th on that flea flicker if he could have had 4.
I know.
He hit off someone's helmet. That could have been, if it goes another way, that could have been 5. You have Jim Harbaugh, who is a former quarterback, sit him down and say maybe the 3 or 4 words to him as he sits down after the first one to calm him down or get him straight. Whereas you have another guy who's coaching, who's the line coach and the offensive coordinator and the head coach in this situation. He's got a lot on his plate. Maybe he doesn't have that sort of wherewithal or to know what to say in that moment to that guy to get him back up. So it's just the value, it's intangible stuff that head coaches have.
Yeah, and that's when you talk about presence and you talk about experience. Like Jim Harbaugh, throughout the course of his playing career and coaching career, has seen just about anything.
Yeah,
and would be able to sit down, and you mentioned it, those 3 or 4 words, or just the calmness that he would bring, or in the moment, hey, this is not who you are,
right?
And it's a foot in the ass sometimes, and it's the right. It's the right demeanor at the right time in the right place for the guy that needs it the most. JJ was the one on Saturday that could have used that little bit of experience.
Attention, from the main guy.
Yeah, and that it makes a difference. Your head coach, the whole team, you understand what an organism that a college team is specifically. I mean, a pro team, it's interesting because it's changing a little bit now that college players are getting paid so much through NIL. It's insane. And teams doing pay for play. I mean, there's some college kids making more than some of the assistants, which is just bizarre. You get into the NFL, and of course, like, the players are making way more than the coaches, and you have to buy in. And that's why Hard Knocks is so fascinating for me, because it's like coaches have to use the fact that you could get cut at any moment. I remember Maurice Jones-Drew told us on this podcast he had just rushed for 1,606 yards for one season for the
Jaguars.
Oakland Raiders. And he comes back the next season and he's in practice and he misses a hole, and they're like, sit down. They put the other guy in practice. So they kind of use that to, like, hey, you could be
there's a guy right behind you who wants your job.
There's a guy right behind you. So they kind of use that to control people. But college is an organism, and you need all the parts in there to keep the amoeba moving down the field.
Yeah, it's so unique, and some of the dynamics are changing, but the power structure is still the same. Head coach, and if we're talking about money as the power structure, head coach to this point still is the moneymaker, and probably will be for some time because they're making so much. Coordinators, same thing. They're still the guys that are, hey, I'm making more than you. I can still tell you what to do. And you get to the NFL and your quarterback is making $50 million a year, but you as a coach are making 6 or 7. Like, we know in terms of the power structure, if this doesn't work out, the quarterback's not the guy that's going to be gone. It's the coach. In college, it's going to be very, very different in regards to, I'm going to go out and recruit somebody specifically to replace you.
So I was listening to Devin Gardner, who does a fantastic job calling games, former Michigan player. He's now calling like
Fox games.
NFL games, Fox games. He's good. He is really good. He made an interesting point about the transfer portal, which is the other factor that has, I think, transfer portal and NIL have changed college football in the last 5 years in the same way that smartphones changed our lives when they came here. I think it's the same impact on something. So he said with the transfer portal, you got teams like Bowling Green and teams like some of these smaller teams or sort of non-conference MAC teams or non-Power 5 teams can get guys who are the same size. You know what I mean? Like guys who are the same size as the Power 5 guys. So you're not there. People are like, why aren't we pushing these guys around? They're a MAC team. We should be like, why? Because with the transfer portal and guys who want a chance to play, and you look at the NFL, NFL's littered with guys from smaller colleges who get drafted.
Yeah, you're always like looking at where'd this guy come from? McNeese State.
Yeah, right.
What the hell?
Right? And so like there's an opportunity.
The Citadel.
You get an opportunity to to show yourself off in another school where you may have that opportunity. So you're seeing the competition is getting a little bit closer.
The gap is closing.
Are you seeing that too?
Yeah, and you're looking at the parity in college football because of the transfer portal, where, I mean, you have guys that are, that were at Ohio State, and all of a sudden Jamison Williams can't seem to get on the field because you've got Garrett Wilson, you got Jackson Smith and Jigba, you've got all these guys. Then he goes down to Alabama. It's not like he downgraded. He went to Alabama and still is a top 12 draft pick for the Detroit Lions.
Right.
Like, that is the mobility of the college athlete right now. And if I can't find a way to get on the field here, it doesn't mean I'm not a great player. I can't be a great player. I just have to find where I can get on the field. What is the best opportunity for me? And here's the unique thing is everybody looks at a lot of the directional schools and say, well, it's not fair because a guy does exactly what you just talked about. Freshman and sophomore years, they grow 2 inches. They put on 30 pounds of muscle. They take 2 seconds off their 40 time, and all of a sudden they want to transfer up. Well, how about all of those really good football players that can't find a way to get on the field at USC, Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan, and they transfer to one of the directional schools? So it goes both ways. They're still getting really good players. It's just the fact that some are coming up and some are coming down.
And going sideways. Joe Burrow to LSU from Ohio State. Yeah. Justin Fields from Georgia to Ohio State.
Yeah, though both guys were amazing. And you get the opportunity to potentially play for that coach who might get the next big job. So if someone's coaching Buffalo, someone's coaching Charlotte, these are ex-Michigan guys, but someone's coaching Tulsa, whatever, they might be the next coach to Oklahoma Nabs, the next coach USC, and you get them in that sort of really amazing on the come up. you might be coached in a way that you never thought you'd be coached. So I think it makes it exciting. All right, last two questions. The fact of college players potentially unionizing. They're talking about it maybe a little bit at Dartmouth. They talked about it. They flirted with it at Northwestern
years ago.
I mean, how do you see that?
I wouldn't use the words flirt and Northwestern right now.
I would never use flirt
we don't need
Pat
to go there.
Fitzgerald in the same sense. But how do you feel about that, players organizing in a way and having a voice in this time?
Well, I'm glad it's happening at the smart schools because if anybody's going to figure it out, it's those at Northwestern, it's those at Dartmouth that are going to figure it out. But all joking aside, eventually it's going to happen. The reason it's taken so long is the turnover in college sports.
Right.
And, I mean, some guys are only there 3 years at the longest, except for this COVID period.
Right.
Guys are there for only 5 years. So how do you create a union? How do you operate a union? How do you sustain a union? It's just that's been part of, I think, the big issue. And now that, hey, there is NIL, that we're going so far down this road of making the student athlete not an amateur anymore.
Right.
The problem is not everybody is of that same caliber.
Yeah.
Now, how do we somehow make it equal? Is there a revenue share? Jim Harbaugh talked about this in his first practice or first press conference.
Yeah.
How do you instill a revenue share? Because the Big Ten is going to make $1 billion a year. That's $1 billion with a B. And all of that money is going to, and he freely admitted, it's going to coaches, it's going to administrators, it's going to universities.
It's going to the league president.
How come some of that doesn't get distributed to the actual talent that's on the field?
Right? Yeah, you could develop what is known as sort of a league minimum. I mean, these guys are putting their lives on the line. People are getting injured for life. It's changing their...
2 guys got carted off in the Bowling Green game last week.
3? Was it 3?
Yeah, those guys...
3 got carted off. 1 went straight to the hospital. So it's a high-risk sport.
Right.
And whether it's a minimum that guys are making,
right.
But I think even more so, like when I got hurt in the NFL, there's workers' comp. Mm-hmm. And I file workers' comp, and I go through that process, and then in 20, 30, 40 years, if I've got an issue because I had a knee surgery, then it's covered by workers' comp.
It's amazing.
There is nothing that covers these athletes from injuries that occurred while they were playing college sports.
Let's take an M out of that B and put it towards that, right? Like, I'm down with that.
Let's
do it. Couple M. So last question, Final Four. It's sitting right now. It's Texas, Florida State, Michigan, and Georgia. I don't know if that's the way it's going to end up. I mean, I think that, like we said before, 10, 12 teams. As you're sitting right now, I mean, I love the gun-to-head predictions.
Heart of hearts.
Ball don't lie. Ball don't lie.
Go to your inner Jansen.
Get in touch with
unwrap the bacon around your heart.
And tell us who is the Final Four, who plays in the national championship game, and who wins it all.
I think the Final Four will probably be Michigan, USC. I think those are the surest things right now. And there's no sure thing in college football. Sure. I think Georgia, with their schedule, I think they end up being back in the college football playoffs. And then that fourth school, it's going to be interesting. And I think there's 2. And there's one, I think you guys, there's going to be a lot of people that laughed at me. I talked about them at the beginning of the year. I think Florida State stumbles along the way.
Yeah.
I think Mac Brown in North Carolina, because of Drake May, is a school that could surprise a lot of people. They haven't really gelled and become that team that I think that they can be. But if there is a guy, and Texas knows this extremely well, that can rally a team and get them to play together, and especially in the biggest moments, it's Mac Brown. I think it's going to be between them and Texas for that 4th playoff spot. And I think Texas, I just don't trust them yet. Yeah. And maybe it's that, hey, I want that long shot. I want that Cinderella story in North Carolina. I think Drake May is probably the first quarterback off the board next April.
Wow.
That's kind of where I go. But I think when it comes down to it, and maybe this is my heart talking, I want Michigan and Georgia in the national championship because they've conquered the Ohio State drill, and they've been able to figure it out at the end of the year. They've got to figure out a way to beat an SEC team, and I think Georgia's going to be the best one this year.
So is your pitch to JJ, because you talk about Drake May coming off the board, to JJ McCarthy?
Caleb Williams probably coming off the board.
Oh, you got 7 or 8 quarterbacks coming up. Do you say to JJ, stick around one more year, you're going to make so much more money? And if you come out in the 24 draft and the quarterback pool there, you could go second or third or even first if you have a hell of a year. Is that your pitch to him?
This will be an ego check for him, because there's certainly value in being the first quarterback off the board or being in the top 5. But let's take a look at some of the successful quarterbacks that have been taken in the 20s. Aaron Rodgers was a guy that found a great fit. I mean, I see you wince.
No,
and
you're right.
When I say Aaron too.
I love him. Yeah.
He is one of the best quarterbacks, but he got a chance to sit and develop behind a Hall of Fame quarterback, learn, and then develop with players around him. And he wasn't exposed to a bad offensive line or not enough talent or a bad defense. I think there is value. If JJ does come out and he's the 6th quarterback taken, or let's just say the 5th, and he doesn't go until 24 or 25, you're going to a team
that's good,
that is already good.
Right. Yeah.
And you get a chance to sit and learn. And where quarterbacks make their big money is in that second contract. You're going to get 5 years with that 5th year option. You're going to get plenty of time. You're still going to make plenty of money. But there's great value in going to a much better franchise and team that's going to be picking in the mid to late 20s.
Yeah. So you're saying you want Detroit to make the playoffs. You want JJ to get drafted by Detroit and then to learn behind Jared Goff and then become the quarterback of the future for the Lions.
You know what? That's ideal, because Jared's got 2 years on his contract. JJ's rookie year will be Jared's last year under contract.
Come on. Let's go.
For a year. Thank you, Jared. Here you go, JJ.
Let's go. I love it. Jansen, you're the best, dude.
Here are the podcasts that we need to direct people to go listen to. If you are a Michigan fan and you're not listening to In the Trenches, what are you doing? It's amazing.
Get on board. Great interviews, and you and Brian Bush. I love Brian Bush, who you do it with. You guys have a great rapport together, and Brian calls the Michigan basketball games. You call the football games. It's perfect. I love Conquering Heroes, where you talk to some of the greats, all-time greats, and people who are currently all-time greats. It's like you really realize who is in the system, anywhere from Carol Hutchins to Bev Plotky to, all the great coaches who have ever coached Michigan. You taught, and great players and people there too. And then the Michigan replay, the replay. I listened to that the other day, and it's just a wonderful breakdown. If you can't get enough of what you just saw, check it out and follow Jon Jansen. Are you Jon Jansen 77? On Twitter and whatnot? Okay.
On Twitter and Instagram.
Okay. I love it, dude. And I'm so happy we met your daughter. Good luck to her in her college search. I know she's in the middle of it right now, but what a cool kid. I'm glad we got to go up to the booth and see you and Doug Karsh. Keep doing what you're doing, man. You're awesome.
I appreciate it. You guys are welcome anytime, and thanks for having me.
Love it. All right, we'll be right back with more and some quick hits right after this. Hey guys, I want to talk to you about our good friends at HelloFresh. I'm so happy they're sponsoring us because I use HelloFresh so much. They're so much fun when it comes to options.
Yes.
I'll say this, honestly, more is more, right? Don't you agree? HelloFresh's options are incredible.
They're incredible.
40 recipes, over 100 add-on items to choose every week, and lots of stuff that I love. You ever go to a restaurant and they don't have anything that you like?
Yes.
I look at the HelloFresh options and I love every single one.
So many choices.
So a busy fall schedule, your kids are back in school, your work's ramping up, doesn't always leave you time to spare. And with HelloFresh, you don't need to spend all evening in the kitchen, whip up a wholesome meal. With their quick and easy recipes, 15-minute meals, you can get a tasty dinner on the table in less time than it takes to order takeout or delivery.
That's so true. And I made a HelloFresh meal with my daughter, which was incredible.
I love it
because she's wanting to learn how to cook a little bit more.
They get the ingredients all measured out for you,
so you don't have to go to the store and buy weird ingredients. You don't have to pick things out.
They have it all measured,
so it's all measured out. It's all right there for you. It's easy to follow instructions that she and I can go through and do it together.
Pictures on a laminated card.
So there's 2 parts to a meal and to cooking. One is the cooking experience, which I now can share with my daughter.
Love it.
And then we present the meal to the family.
Like you did that. You're welcome, everybody.
And also, she and I both have this crazy sense of accomplishment, and we know that there's a variety of food. We know that it's not the traditional same food rut that we're sitting in because we make the same 4 things over and over again.
That's right.
It gives you variety. They're not hard to make. They don't take a long time to make.
You usually only use like one pan.
Right.
It's amazing. There is
well, they have you doing one thing, and then while you're doing that one thing, you do the other thing, and then before you know it, you have this full meal. That other thing that we do with our cooking before without HelloFresh was that it's like just one thing, and that's the whole dinner.
Now you've got like
side dishes, options, other things. You got a main course. It looks like a meal that you would get at a restaurant, and it tastes better because it's fresh.
So you guys should try it. Go to HelloFresh.com/50cheapseats and use the code 50cheapseats for 50% off plus 15% off the next 2 months. That's HelloFresh.com/50cheapseats, 50 cheap seats all together, and use the code 50cheapseats for 50% off plus 15% off the next 2 months. HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. Hey guys, welcome back to the show. Jon Jansen, love that dude. He is amazing. His time is very valuable. So we're going to do the quick hits on our own. We're going to do the Patreon on our own. If you're not joined our Patreon, it's $5 a month. You get great videos, the craziest sports, weirdest sports video that has, graced our feeds this week, as well as new episodes of Cheaper Seats.
And it's a really great way to support comedians who are in 2 strikes right now.
Yeah.
We are not allowed to work in many ways. This is one way we're allowed to.
Like, hey, I want to support these guys. Simple, easy way. Okay,
so let's get into quick hits. I don't know if you saw this whole dust up with the Bills reporter, Maddie Glab. Had to apologize after a hot mic in a post-game presser. Basically, all the reporters are waiting around. She works for the team.
Cameras on the stage.
And they're waiting for the players.
Mic is on.
And someone says, why don't you go grab Stefon Diggs?
And she's like, you can't control him. He'll say F you to your face.
Right. Now, here's why I think this is significant. And then she had to apologize.
Right. Well, she didn't realize it was caught on a... You don't say that in general. You can't control him.
Which, by the way, not a great look for a white woman to say about a black man, but fine. That's number 1. Number 2, woman, it's not fair. I think it sucks. But when you have a woman in a media position, there's a higher standard that they are held to.
It's a bummer.
It sucks for them, but that is the reality. You don't want someone being like, we can't hire a woman to be our media relations. Look at, they'll just...
Maddie Glab. She'll
Maddie Glab it. She'll start glabbing all over the place.
To be glib is to just not really to sort of brush something off. To be glab is to... talk smack about someone when they're not there on a hot mic.
And she did apologize with contrite. She was contrite.
She was contrite, and she had to eat all of her words.
But Stefon Diggs did not make it easier on her.
No.
He was like, I'm confused by this. I'm concerned by this.
And concerned by it. And that is taking somewhat of the higher road.
I'm troubled by the comment.
So what I would say to her is, in those situations, and I know you feel like you're comfortable with everybody, there could be mics on everywhere. What I would say to her is, this is how she could have said it in a way that would have been,
I'll do my best.
I'll do my best. I don't know if he's going to come. I'll do my best. Sometimes he comes, sometimes he doesn't come. I'll do my best. That's it. That's all you got to say. Keep it profesh.
Again, a woman saying that about a man, what you just said. I don't know.
That's maybe not good.
So let's stay in the Bills family for our second quick hit.
This is the craziest story I've ever heard.
Nobody can say that Bills fans don't go hard. We've all seen the videos of them jumping off cars, smashing folding tables.
That's right.
All
Bills
that
Mafia.
Stuff. An unidentified football fan, Bills fan.
Sure.
I don't know why they knew he was a Bills fan.
Oh, he's a part of the Mafia.
Was naked and covered in human excrement.
Yeah.
Is this a scene from Shawshank Redemption?
Was it his own?
Is this a scene from Raising Arizona?
I don't know. He had to climb through a river of shit just to get out of there.
He was discovered in a construction site hole near the Buffalo Bills home opener on Sunday. The extent of injuries was a cut to his forehead. That's it.
So he's in a hole, and he's got excrement all over him, cut to his forehead.
Again, we mentioned Bills Mafia. We know they're crazy. Can
we DNA test the excrement to know when it actually was on? Like, can we fact date it, time stamp it to see when it was on him?
These guys go shirtless in the freezing cold. They jump on the tables.
That's right.
I don't know. This whole thing is a roller coaster.
The thread was a roller coaster. The whole thing.
I'm just glad that I don't know, this guy. He was insane. He said, "I'm glad I was tall enough to join the Erie County Sheriff's Department on that ride." Or you were saying that, Rand?
Yeah.
This is so unbelievable. The Bills fan, I don't get how he falls into a hole. So he covered himself in excrement.
I don't know if
he was drunk. He was 29 years old, jumped over the fence at the stadium, and he fell 30 to 40 feet.
That's unbelievable.
And only sustained a cut on his forehead. To me, that's like the immaculate.
That's the miracle. That's the miracle that the Bills really need.
Why was he naked? I guess he went into a porta potty. This is how drunk he was. Smeared poop all over himself.
Or probably tried to climb into the actual potty itself.
I don't know.
He was under an influence of alcohol,
LSD, cocaine, and marijuana.
So those should have balanced each other out a little bit, right?
Or pick one.
Yeah, pick one. Pick two.
He had alcohol, LSD, cocaine, and marijuana. A drug for each of the Bills' losses in the 90s in the Super Bowl.
That's right. One for each one.
The rescue team arrived on the scene. Took 20 minutes for them to get this guy out of there, out of the hole.
And no one wants to touch him. Like everyone's like, everybody put like a giant glove on.
So the first call came in concerning the man at 12:18 p.m.
local time.
So did he stay overnight and was in?
I think he slept there. I mean, that's
what you know when you come to your construction job just to do your work. You're not happy to be back at work on Monday. You probably drank at the Bills
lost,
game.
probably. I don't know.
I think they won. They won. So and then you're in that situation where you're like, oh God, there's a naked guy and
with
he smells
shit
like
all
shit.
over him. Yeah. Great.
Get the cops here, and then the cops don't want to deal with him.
By the way,
you got to hose him down before you get him in your cop car.
Construction for the Bills' new stadium, named New Highmark Stadium, is happening west of Highmark Stadium, just across Abbott Road. That's what's happening right now.
They're like, we can't have nice things. We want to build a new stadium, and this drunk Bills fan is already ruining it by being covered in shit.
If they did win this weekend, this to me is...
I think they did win.
So
Bills win, Aaron.
This to me is like... We'll look it up. I'll look up their record.
Look it up.
This to me is like the Bills' playoff game against Kansas City, because
you win.
Everything, you're doing great. You're on the road.
Right.
Everything's good, and then you lose the coin toss, meaning the thing that went up in the air and fell down is now covered in, and your whole thing then starts to get
the whole world is covered in
shit. Is really what it is. So we're gonna look to see if the Bills won. I think the Bills won. They're 1-1.
They did.
So they're 1-1.
So this is just a guy celebrating a victory.
That's it. And then everything goes to shit.
Finally, Lincoln Riley did an interview in June that just came out, in which he claimed that before he left Oklahoma, after he announced he was going to USC, there were several break-in attempts at his home.
So then the Norman police were like, hold up.
No, they're coming with receipts.
They're like,
now, I don't know if this...
Zero reports of break-ins.
So I don't know if this is... like Norman Police Department, who you're assuming if you're a cop in Norman, Oklahoma, you're going to be a huge Oklahoma fan.
Oklahoma fan.
You're going to want to make Lincoln Riley look bad.
So you can alter the facts.
We don't know what they're saying, but like think about the sources coming. They're like, there was one call about a Cadillac that was driving across
by the house. No break-ins.
No. And Lincoln Riley lives in a gated community.
So who's lying here?
I don't know. Is Lincoln Riley lying to try and get sympathy?
Or are the Oklahoma police lying to be like, don't listen to this guy.
Because they're obviously Sooner fans.
That's right.
I don't know, but it's such a weird story for him. Like, and for it to come out now, like, why is he trashing Oklahoma?
He was already
at
for
USC.
a year. For a year.
Maybe in some way he's trying to be like, this is insane. This is the insane behavior of a college fan base. I understand that fans would be mad at a coach for just up and leaving, a young coach who had promise and there was promise for the program. And I do think the Sooners got a less good coach.
Yeah.
Even though they got he used to be the defensive guy at Clemson. Mm-hmm. And he's great. But it's not the same as Lincoln Riley. In fact, it's a wholesale change to defense from offense.
That's right.
But
you have an offensive genius.
Lincoln Riley, one of the most...
And they took their quarterback, who was the Heisman Trophy winner last year. So I can understand why Sooner fans would not be happy with this.
Look, a good egging of the house, maybe. I don't know about break-ins.
Don't break in. Just teepee it, egg it. Just give this guy something to clean up.
I mean, in the same way...
He gave you a mess to clean up. You give him a mess to clean up.
So I do think college fans take it too far. The cheap shot that was done on Travis Hunter. But now that guy, that kid is getting death threats.
It's like,
and his family is getting death threats, and they printed his address, and
they doxed him.
And it's like, come on, man, you can't do this to this kid. He made a mistake.
Also, Lincoln Riley, move on. Like, why are you bringing this up to now bring it? You know what I'm saying? Like, why is he bringing it up now?
Now they're going to know where you live in L.A.
All right. Listen, I want to say this too. The Rams' last second field goal. Did you see that? By the way,
yeah, that was weird. That was super
10,
weird. Yeah, this is a little
with
extra
4
quick
seconds left to beat the spread and only lose by 7 is insane.
This is when you're like, okay,
gambling's a part of it. That was insane. They go for a field goal that won't do anything except beat the spread. You should be going for a touchdown and trying to run whatever touchdown. I understand even wanting to get your kicker some work. That's fine, but it still looks bad.
The spread.
It looks bad. It looks like somebody on the squad
had a lot of money.
So
on beating the spread.
That was insane. I mean,
that's a hard moment to. It's like one of those moments when if you're like not a believer in like spiritual things happen and then like some crazy spiritual coincidence
like
happen.
Your coffee cup moves across the table.
Right.
And you're like, what just did that? What just did that? I'm sitting here and you're sitting here, and then all of a sudden
it just goes like that, and you're like, I don't believe in ghosts.
There it is.
Or
believe in it.
Like that, and you're like, I can't explain.
Whatever you explain is going to sound bad. That's what I'm saying. It's just crazy. So I would just say, like, you got to be extra careful.
Yeah.
Like if you're down 10, unless you have money on the game. If you're down 10, you go for a touchdown pass and just be like, look, we're trying to get as many points as we can. I'm trying to get work on my team, my offense. And if you get it, great. If you don't, you don't. But like, still, if they would have beat the spread with a touchdown with 6 points and the game's over, don't even kick the extra point.
Can't argue it.
Can't argue because they're trying their best to score as many points as they can.
Yeah.
The field goal, it's hard to explain.
Hard to explain.
It's like a great plot point in a script. I love that. All right, let's take a break. We come back.
Voicemail from
Marky Mark Wahlberg on the other side of the break. It's View from the Cheap Seats. Don't go anywhere. Hey guys, welcome back to the show. As we promised before, an old friend joins us. We have a voicemail from the great Mark Wahlberg, Marky Mark. He's got some ideas about the
strike and how to make it healthy and whatnot.
All right, let's take a listen.
What's up, Sklars? How you doing? Hey, just wanted to give you a call. I just got back. Where am I? I don't know. I'm in one of my houses. I gotta remember this address because I was trying to get protein delivered here. I needed another pallet. Anyway, hey dudes, I haven't seen you on the strike lines. I mean, I know you've been out there. Like I've seen your posts. I know you're doing that, but I haven't seen you out there with me. Basically, what I do, if you want to do it with me, usually I guess they start officially at like 8:30 or 9. I get there around 5 a.m. and then I just run it. I run around Warner Brothers, I run around Paramount, I run around Netflix, and, if I see anybody going in that I know is like an executive or whatever, I just push them, and I'd be like, oh, hey, sorry, I didn't see you there, but you want to know what? I did see him there. Anyway, loving the strike. I hate what is happening for all the fucking great people who work so hard, and even the people who just kind of found themselves in the union through like family ties, whatever, not the show. I mean, Donnie. And, but all those people, the great thing is though, hey, we got to look at silver linings, right? Silver linings of this playbook, which I turned down, is people are getting their cardio on. People are doing their cardio, and that makes me happy. And I need to get happy right now because I don't know if you have paid attention to the Patriots, but they don't have a number one on the call sheet. They did a lot of great work with the little, maybe less than 6 foot wide receivers. Maybe somebody who's actually played the role before. And I don't mean by another team. I mean in real life, like a movie. Maybe a little Papali action. I'm just saying, maybe I come back. And maybe we see what I can do as quarterback. And then I throw to myself. Basically, I'm like, what's that kid's name? He's awesome. His name sounds like Canton Sugar. Playing for Prime. I think it is just Sugar, actually. And he's got his brother on that team. So I know what that's like to be a winner and get it done. Sometimes life is about going 98 yards all by yourself while your brother watches. And every once in a while they catch a pick. I don't want to get into all this. The Buffaloes are for real, and the Patriots need someone who is for real. That's right, I said Patriots, because I'm not going to pronounce them correctly all the time until they start playing correctly. So, anyway, if you guys want to do the run with me, that'd be awesome. If you want to help, I don't know, you guys could probably get a petition going for me to be on the Patriots. It's kind of better when it comes from just, just people who, are fans of the game versus people who play it, is basically what I want to say. So, all right, I'm going to get another workout in, probably do a 10K. And then I just got a Stone Cold Creamery installed here at this house, if it is the right one. It's fucking great, dudes. You got to get my version of Stone Cold Creamy. It's the way it should be. Stone Cold Creamy is it's just ice, and then they just put almond dust on it, and it's great. Maybe a Brazilian nut, which is good for you. Which is good for you if you know where. All right, anyway, I've talked to you dudes long enough. This has probably been like, I don't know, 5 minutes of your time, probably an hour of my time. So I'm going to get that other workout in. Hope to see you guys on the picket lines out there. I love seeing everybody striking solidarity, baby. Fuck these dudes, right? Everybody deserves to get all they can. I know I have. Why not everybody else? And also, get that cardio in. Those steps count, but running counts more. All right, I'll talk to you guys later. Be nice to each other. Bye.
I mean, listen, stuff is working for him. Like, you can't even deny that it isn't working for him.
But he's right about so much stuff.
He is right about all of it.
He'll always be Vinny Papale to
He
me.
will. He will always be that hero. He's always that underdog hero, even though he's kind of not. He's
an underdog
not an
anymore.
underdog
He's
at all.
the top dog.
All right, guys, that is show. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you, Jon Jansen. Thank you, Daniel Van Kirk. Here's where you can see us. We've got shows coming up in Fort Collins, which is going to be amazing.
Amazing.
Fort Collins, Colorado. Let's sell these shows out on the 6th and 7th of October. Then on the 10th in Los Angeles, we're doing Night of 1,000 Sklars. It's going to be so much fun at the Bourbon Room. I think Craig Robinson, hopefully David Spade, hopefully Melissa Villasenor, and a handful of other people. That should be an amazing show at the Bourbon Room in LA, Night of 1,000 Sklars, October 10th. And then we've got great stuff coming up. The Bourbon Room, or not the Bourbon Room, the Blue Room in Springfield, Missouri. That's November 10th and 11th. And then on the 12th, we're going to do our two-man show in New York as part of the New York Comedy Festival. Still getting a theater ready for that.
December, we're in
Cleveland at Hilarities on the 1st and 2nd, right? And then the January 4th, we're in Portland. January 5th, we're at Helium. And January 5th, we're at the Crocodile up in Seattle. We just booked the last weekend, beginning of February, like I think it's the 31st, 1st, and 2nd we're going to be in the Denver Club South at the Comedy Works South. That's going to be great. Then at Mark Ridley's Comedy Castle a month later, and then in Minneapolis at Acme a month later, and later that month in April we'll be in at Moon Tower, hopefully, and then in Alaska maybe with Gary Gulman in May, which would be awesome. Super stuff. Supersklars.com. We love you guys. Punch a waterfall. We'll see you next week.